My mother-in-law ambushed me at her birthday dinner. "Elena, sweetheart, it's time we talked about the brownstone. You should add our names to the deed. It's what families do." I'd inherited that house from my father, the man who spent 30 years restoring it brick by brick with his own hands. But my husband's family had been circling it for months, like they could smell the equity through the walls. When the attorney pulled up the lien records and read them out loud, my sister-in-law dropped her wine glass on the marble floor. Before we continue, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this story, because what comes next is something I still can't believe happened to my own family. It started 7 months ago, right after my father passed away. Dad left me his brownstone in Charleston, not the trendy part where tourists buy overpriced sweetgrass baskets, but the old part, the real part, where the houses have stories baked into the plaster. He'd bought it in 1991 for practically nothing and spent 3 decades turning it into something extraordinary. Hand-carved banisters, original heart pine floors he'd sanded and sealed himself, a garden out back with a fig tree older than me. The appraisal came back at $685,000. I nearly fell off my chair. My husband Marcus and I had been married for 2 years. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Somerville, about 20 minutes outside the city. Marcus worked as an operations manager at a logistics company. I was a nurse practitioner at a family clinic. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. When I inherited the brownstone, I didn't plan to sell it. I planned to move in. Dad would have wanted that. Marcus was supportive at first. We talked about renovating the kitchen, maybe converting the attic into an office. He seemed excited, but the moment his family found out about the inheritance, everything changed. His mother, Gloria, was the first to call. "Elena, congratulations on the house. What a blessing. Your father was such a wonderful man." She'd met my father exactly twice. Then, almost casually, she added, "You know, Marcus should be on that deed. You're married now. It's only right." I let it go. Grief makes you soft. You don't want to fight with anyone when you're still finding your father's reading glasses in coat pockets and smelling his aftershave on pillowcases. So I said what I always said. "We'll figure it out." But Gloria didn't let it go. She brought it up at every family gathering. Sunday dinners at her house in North Charleston became interrogation sessions disguised as pot roast. Her daughter, Marcus's older sister Vivian, was always right there beside her, nodding along, adding pressure like she was squeezing a tourniquet. The birthday dinner was the breaking point. We were at Gloria's house, the one she'd been renting for the past 3 years since she sold her old place. The dining room was packed. Gloria at the head of the table, Vivian and her husband Derek across from us, Marcus's younger brother Terrence picking at his food like he'd rather be anywhere else, and me, sitting next to my husband, who was already on his second glass of bourbon before the salad course. Gloria set down her fork and looked directly at me. "Elena, I've been patient, but this has gone on long enough. That brownstone needs to have Marcus's name on it, and frankly, mine and Vivian's too. As secondary holders." Secondary holders. She said it like she was reading from a legal document she'd practiced in the mirror. "Why would I add your name to my father's house?" I asked. "Because," Gloria said, leaning forward, "if something happens to you and Marcus, who handles the property? You don't have children. Your mother's been gone since you were 12. Your father's gone now. We're your family, Elena. This protects everyone." Vivian jumped in, her voice dripping with that particular kind of sweetness that always made my teeth ache. "It's not like we're asking for money. We just want to make sure the house stays in the family. Our family." I looked at Marcus. He was staring at his plate. His jaw was tight, but he wasn't saying a word. "Marcus?" I said. He looked up. "They have a point, Elena. It's just paperwork. Just paperwork. The house my father built with his bare hands. The house where I learned to ride a bike in the hallway, because it rained all week. The house where I held his hand while he took his last breath. Just paperwork. I'll think about it," I said. Gloria slammed her palm on the table. Not hard, but hard enough to rattle the silverware. "Thinking is what you've been doing for 7 months. We need an answer." Derek, Vivian's husband, who normally never spoke at these dinners, cleared his throat. "Elena, I work in banking. I can tell you that having multiple names on a deed is standard practice for estate protection. It's actually irresponsible not to." I didn't know Derek worked in banking. I thought he managed a tire shop. "I appreciate the concern," I said carefully. but I'm not making any decisions tonight." Vivian scoffed. "You'd think she'd be grateful. We welcomed her into this family. The least she could do is share." Share. Like my dead father's house was a casserole. The drive home was worse than the dinner. Marcus was quiet for the first 10 minutes, which in our marriage meant he was building up to something. "You embarrassed me," he finally said. "I embarrassed you? They're my family, Elena. They're trying to help us, and you sit there acting like they're criminals. They want their names on my house. Our house. We're married. What's yours is mine." "Actually," I said, my voice going cold in a way that surprised even me, "that house was mine before we got married. And South Carolina law says inherited property is separate property. It's not ours. It's mine." He pulled into the apartment parking lot and killed the engine, sat there in the dark. Then he said something that changed everything. "If you loved me, you wouldn't even hesitate." I went inside alone. He sat in the car for another hour. I know because I watched from the bedroom window, and I counted every minute. The next morning, I called my friend Janelle, a paralegal at a real estate firm downtown. I didn't want to hire a full attorney yet. I just wanted information. "Jan, what happens legally if I add someone to my property deed?" "Depends on the structure. Joint tenancy, tenancy in common, there are different setups. But Elena, listen to me carefully. Any name on that deed becomes a legal owner. They can force a sale. They can take out liens. Their creditors can come after your property." "Their creditors?" "If someone on your deed owes money and a court puts a judgment against them, that judgment can attach to any property they own, including yours." My hands went cold. "Why do you ask?" I told her everything. Gloria's campaign, Vivian's pressure, Derek's fake banking expertise, Marcus's guilt trip. Janelle was quiet for a long moment. "Elena, I've seen this pattern before. When family members get aggressive about being added to a deed, it's usually not about protection. It's about access. Can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead. Has Gloria had any money problems lately?" "Vivian? Anyone in that family?" I thought about it. Gloria had been renting for 3 years, which I'd always thought was a lifestyle choice after selling her old house. Vivian and Derek had recently moved to a smaller place, which they called downsizing. Terrence still lived at home at 27. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Do me a favor. Give me their full legal names. I'm going to run a basic public record search. Liens, judgments, bankruptcies. It's all public information. Takes about an hour." I gave her the names. Gloria Denise Whitfield, Vivian Marie Whitfield Crawford, Derek James Crawford, even Terrence Antonio Whitfield, just in case. Then I sat on my father's porch, in his rocking chair, and waited. Janelle called back in 90 minutes. Her voice was different, careful, the way nurses talk when the test results are bad. "Elena, you need to hear this. Gloria didn't sell her old house voluntarily. It was a short sale. She owed more than it was worth after taking out a home equity line she couldn't repay. She currently has $47,000 in credit card judgments against her. 2 different creditors. She's been dodging collections for over a year." I closed my eyes. Vivian and Derek. They didn't downsize by choice. Derek's tire shop went under 18 months ago. They filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy, discharged 6 months ago. But they still owe the IRS $22,000 in back taxes, and tax debt doesn't go away in bankruptcy. The IRS has a lien on any property Derek owns. My chest tightened. "And Terrence?" "Terrence has a pending civil judgment for $15,000. Car accident settlement he never paid. His wages are being garnished, which is probably why he still lives with Gloria." I couldn't speak. "Elena, if you add any of these people to your deed, their creditors can come after your brownstone." Gloria's judgment, creditors. The IRS for Derek's tax lien, even Terrence's accident settlement. Your father's house becomes their financial life raft, and you become the one who drowns. I sat there rocking in my father's chair, listening to the creak of the wood he'd oiled every spring for 30 years, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. Clarity. What do I do? First, do not add anyone to that deed. Second, I think you should bring this into the open. Meet with them, but bring a professional. An attorney, ideally someone who specializes in real estate. Let them explain the implications in a room where no one can pretend they don't understand. And Marcus? That's the part you need to figure out yourself. I spent 3 days figuring it out. 3 days of Marcus barely speaking to me, sleeping with his back turned, leaving the room when I entered. 3 days of Gloria calling and leaving voicemails. Elena, I hope you're coming to your senses. Elena. Vivian found a notary who can come to the house. Elena. We just want what's best for everyone. On the third night, I sat Marcus down in our living room. I want to have the family meeting about the house, I said. This Saturday. At the brownstone. His whole body relaxed. His shoulders dropped. He even smiled. Really? Really? But I want to bring an attorney. To make sure everything is done correctly. He nodded eagerly. Of course. Mom will be so relieved. She just wants us all to be protected. Protected. That word again. I hired Catherine Park, a real estate attorney Janelle recommended. 45 years old, former prosecutor, had a reputation for being the kind of woman who could smile while dismantling your entire argument. I met with her on Thursday and laid everything out. Your friend Janelle did good work, Catherine said, reviewing the records. This family is in serious financial trouble, and your property is the only significant unencumbered asset within their reach. If they get on that deed, it's not a matter of if it gets leveraged. It's when. Can you explain this to them? Directly? Catherine smiled. It would be my pleasure. Saturday morning. My father's brownstone. I'd cleaned it the night before, polished the banister he'd carved, swept the porch he'd rebuilt, put fresh flowers in the kitchen where he used to make his gumbo. It felt like arming a castle. They arrived in a caravan. Gloria's rented Buick, Vivian and Derek's SUV, with the dent in the bumper they'd never fixed, Terrence in an Uber, because his license was suspended, something I now understood. Marcus answered the door. He was practically bouncing. Elena's ready, he told his mother. This is really happening. Gloria walked in, carrying a bottle of champagne and a folder of papers. She'd actually brought paperwork. We gathered in the living room, the one with the bay windows and the fireplace mantel Dad had salvaged from a demolished church. Catherine sat in the corner with her laptop and a leather portfolio. I'd introduced her as my real estate attorney, here to facilitate. Gloria eyed her suspiciously, but didn't object. She was too close to winning. Well, Gloria said, settling into the armchair like she already owned it. Let's not drag this out. Where do we sign? Before anyone signs anything, I said, Catherine needs to explain exactly what we're agreeing to. Legally. Catherine stood. Thank you all for coming. I want to make sure everyone understands the legal implications of adding names to a property deed. She opened her laptop. This brownstone is currently owned solely by Elena Whitfield Parker. She inherited it from her father, James Whitfield, who owned it free and clear. Current appraised value is $685,000. No mortgage, no liens, no encumbrances of any kind. We know all that, Derek said with a wave of his hand. Let's get to the signatures. Catherine continued as if he hadn't spoken. When additional parties are added to a deed, each party becomes a legal co-owner. This means any co-owner can petition the court for a forced partition sale. That means Elena could be legally compelled to sell this house against her will. Any co-owner can use the property as collateral for loans or lines of credit. And this is critical. Any outstanding debts, liens, or judgments against a co-owner can attach to this property. The room got very quiet. Gloria's champagne smile flickered. Well, none of that applies to us. Actually, Catherine said, turning her laptop to face the room, that's exactly why I'm here. As Elena's attorney, I conducted a standard due diligence review of all proposed co-owners. This is routine before any deed modification. Due diligence. Vivian's voice went up an octave. What does that mean? It means I checked public financial records, which is my legal obligation to my client. She clicked to the first screen. Gloria Denise Whitfield. Short sale of previous residence 3 years ago. Outstanding credit card judgments totaling $47,000 from 2 creditors. Active collections proceedings. Gloria's face drained of color. That's private. You had no right. It's all public record, Mrs. Whitfield. Anyone can look it up. Catherine moved to the next screen. Vivian Whitfield Crawford and Derek James Crawford. Chapter 7 bankruptcy filed and discharged 18 months ago. Outstanding IRS tax lien of $22,000. Under federal law, a tax lien attaches to any real property in which the debtor holds an ownership interest. If Derek's name goes on this deed, the IRS can place a lien on this house immediately. Vivian grabbed Derek's arm. Her face had gone the color of ash. Derek stared at the floor. Catherine continued. Terrence Antonio Whitfield. Pending civil judgment of $15,000. Wage garnishment currently active. She closed the laptop gently. To summarize, if Elena adds any of you to this deed, this $685,000 property immediately becomes vulnerable to approximately $134,000 in combined debts, liens, and judgments. The IRS alone could force a sale to satisfy Derek's tax obligation. Elena would lose her father's house, not because of anything she did, but because of debts she didn't even know existed. The silence in that room was so thick I could hear the fig tree rustling outside the kitchen window. Marcus stood up slowly. He looked at his mother, his sister, his brother-in-law, his little brother. He looked at them like he was seeing them for the first time. Is any of this true? Gloria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. It's complicated, she started. Is it true, Mom? We needed help, Vivian whispered. She was crying now, mascara running in dark lines down her cheeks. We just needed something to hold on to. Your wife has this beautiful house, free and clear, and we're drowning. We thought if we could just use my wife's inheritance to dig yourself out. It's not like that, Derek said, but his voice was so small, it barely carried across the room. Then what is it like? I asked. Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've spent 7 months guilt-tripping me, manipulating my husband, calling me selfish and ungrateful, all so you could put your names on my deed and leverage my father's house to cover your debts. Your father would have wanted family to stick together, Gloria said, and there were tears in her eyes, real ones, but also something hard underneath, something calculating. Even now, my father, I said, and my voice cracked for the first time all day, spent 30 years building this house. He poured his life into it. He left it to me because he trusted me to take care of it. And you want to hand it over to the IRS and credit card companies. We weren't going to let that happen, Vivian insisted. You couldn't stop it from happening to your own homes. What made you think you could stop it from happening to mine? That landed like a slap. Vivian recoiled. Even Gloria flinched. Marcus turned to me. His eyes were wet. Elena, I didn't know. I swear on everything, I didn't know any of this. I searched his face for the lie, for the tell, for any sign that he'd been part of this. But all I saw was a man whose entire understanding of his family had just collapsed in real time. I believe you, I said. He turned back to his family. Get out. Marcus, baby, please. Gloria reached for his arm. He stepped back. Don't. You lied to me. You used me to pressure my wife. You tried to take the one thing her father left her, and you wrapped it in the word family, like that would make it okay. That's not family. That's fraud. Gloria stood up, and for a moment I thought she was going to argue. But something in Marcus's face stopped her. Maybe she saw the boy she'd raised finally becoming someone she couldn't control. Maybe she saw the door closing. She picked up her unopened champagne and her folder of worthless papers and walked to the front door. Vivian and Derek followed. Terrence, who hadn't said a single word the entire time, stood up last. He looked at Marcus, then at me. I'm sorry, he said, quietly. Honestly. Then he left too. The door closed. The house settled around us like it was exhaling. Marcus sat down on the floor. Right there in the living room, on the heart pine planks my father had sanded by hand. He put his head in his hands, and he cried. Not the quiet kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep. The kind that shakes your whole body. The kind you only cry when something fundamental breaks. I sat down next to him, on my father's floor, in my father's house, beside the man I'd chosen. I'm sorry, he said between breaths. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were the problem. You didn't know. I should have asked questions. When Mom was so obsessed with the deed, I should have wondered why. I should have protected you. You're protecting me now. He looked at me. What do we do? I've already talked to Catherine about a few things. I'm setting up a revocable living trust for the property. My name only. It protects the house from any future claims, lawsuits, anything. and I'm drafting a postnuptial agreement that clearly defines this house as my separate property." He nodded without hesitating. "Whatever you need. And your family doesn't come to this house until they acknowledge what they tried to do. A real acknowledgement, not excuses, not explanations. An apology." He wiped his eyes. "You might be waiting a long time. I can wait. This house has been here for 35 years. It's not going anywhere." 4 months passed. Gloria called Marcus every week, but the conversations were short and stiff. She never once mentioned the deed or the debts. She also never apologized. She talked about the weather, about what she'd cooked for dinner, about a show she was watching. Anything to pretend that Saturday in the brownstone had never happened. Vivian stopped speaking to us entirely. Derek lost the SUV to repossession. Terrence, surprisingly, was the one who reached out. He sent me a handwritten letter. Not an email, not a text. A letter, in actual handwriting, on lined paper. "Elena," he wrote, "I knew what they were planning. Not the details, but the intent. I should have warned you, and I didn't. That was wrong. I'm working on my own debts, and I'm working on being someone who doesn't stay quiet when he should speak up. I'm sorry about your dad. He sounds like he was a good man. You take care of his house." I put that letter in the drawer of my father's desk, next to his reading glasses and the last birthday card he ever gave me. Marcus started seeing a therapist. Not because I asked him to, but because he said he needed to understand how he'd been so blind. How he'd let his family manipulate him. How he'd turned on me instead of questioning them. It wasn't just about the house. He told me one night, sitting on the porch in Dad's rocking chair. "It was about the fact that I automatically believed them over you. That scares me. I need to understand why." I loved him more in that moment than I had on our wedding day. 6 months after the confrontation, I finished restoring the kitchen. New cabinets, but the same layout Dad had designed. A window over the sink that looked out onto the fig tree. I stood there one morning, coffee in hand, watching the light come through the leaves, and I thought about what my father used to say. "A house isn't walls, Elena. It's the decisions you make inside them." I made my decision the day I said no. Not just no to Gloria, or to the deed, or to the pressure. No to the idea that love means surrendering what's yours. No to the guilt that comes wrapped in the word family. No to the lie that protecting yourself means you don't care about anyone else. My house is in a trust now. My name, my terms, my father's legacy, protected by the daughter he raised to know the difference between generosity and being taken for a ride. Marcus and I are stronger than we've ever been. Not because the crisis brought us together. That's what people say in movies. In real life, crisis pulls you apart first. It showed us the cracks in our foundation, and we chose to fill them instead of pretending they weren't there. He chose me over the family that raised him, and I chose to believe him when he said he didn't know. Those were both hard choices. They were also the right ones. Gloria still hasn't apologized. Vivian moved to Atlanta and blocked us both on social media. Derek got a job at another tire shop. Terrence is paying off his judgment, $50 at a time, and he texts Marcus every Sunday. He's the only one who came out of this with his dignity intact. Maybe because he was the only one who chose honesty over pride. And me? I walk through my father's front door every single day, run my hand along the banister he carved, step on the floors he laid, and I remember that no one is entitled to what you've built. Not your in-laws, not your spouse, not anyone who wraps their greed in the word family and expects you to hand over the keys. I remember that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. And you get to decide who walks through them. The best decision I ever made was saying no. And the second best was marrying a man who, when the truth hit him in the face, had the courage to stand up and say, "I choose her." Some families love you for who you are. Some families love you for what you have. And some families can't tell the difference. I can. My father made sure of that.